Hello and welcome to a slight change from our regularly scheduled programming. This being episode 0 of the Freedom Kickstarter podcast, name TBC, that might change. Mike and I thought it would be useful and interesting to have this episode 0 as a bit of an introduction to him, his background, his career, etc., before we dived into his episodes with other people. Mainly so that people who are kind of newer to his ecosystem, newer to his stuff, had a place to start. So, without further ado, episode 0 of the Unnamed for Now podcast. Introducing Mike Samuels. This is your podcast, but introducing Mike. So, the way that we have structured today's podcast is really kind of getting an understanding of how you got to here, Mike. So, your journey. But for those who don't know you, kind of give us a couple of minutes on you, who you are, what you do, your background, that type of thing.
Sure. So where I am now is I'm a copywriter, which obviously sounds a bit tedious, and most people don't really know what that is. They think it's writing legal documents, doing copywriters in RIGHT.
Yeah.
But it's a bit different from that. So essentially, to boil it down, I write sales and marketing material. Nowadays, I tend to spend my time kind of 50% working with clients, and there'll be clients in all different niches. So it might be health and fitness, it could be supplements, it could be finance, it could be mindset, coaching, biz op, anything like that. And then about 50% of that time is spent helping other people who want to be copywriters. So I've got a course called the Freedom Kickstarter. I run a mentoring group, and I do a bit of consulting as well. So yeah, these days it's kind of 50-50 sort of workload wise. I'm very fortunate. I tend to work kind of 25, 30 hours a week. So it's, not quite part-time hours, but not far off it.
Yeah.
And also very fortunate for the fact that I can kind of do it from anywhere, really. So that's the current lifestyle in a nutshell, really.
Cool. And you live in the UK, you own a few houses, you've got a few different revenue streams we'll come on to in a little bit. But tell me a bit about your kind of personal life now as well, like where you are in your life. I think that would be important to understand as well.
Yeah, I'm definitely at the stage where I've kind of done the whole thing in business of working a lot, burning yourself out and not really enjoying that.
Sure.
And so I've made the decision now that I very much have a lifestyle business. So like you say, live in Southampton in the UK. A lot of people wonder why I'm still in the UK. I do quite like the UK actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, I travel quite a bit as well. So that's a big thing for me. A big value is being able to work from anywhere. I do really enjoy my work as well. I'm one of these people that I think if you solely set up a business so you don't have to work, are you really going to have the dedication to pursue the work you need to do in order to get there?
Sure.
Whereas actually, if you've got something you quite enjoy, ultimately you'll want to do it even on your days off. So I will travel and I'll do a bit of work. My weekends, 9 times out of 10, if I'm bored and the girlfriend's out, I will choose to work just because I enjoy it.
Yeah.
So certainly I've not set my business up so I don't have to work. It's more that I've got that freedom and flexibility. But yeah, copywriting is a big thing for me, but similarly, it's not the most important thing. So I'm not one of these business owners who is solely about business. I don't really see myself as a copywriter. I think that's the thing I do. It's not quite a job, but I've certainly moved more into that mindset because other things in life matter more to me, like the travel, like the freedom, like my running and other sporting activities, and all that kind of stuff.
Cool. Brilliant. So that's kind of where you are now. So I think it'd be really interesting, and I thought it was really interesting when we spoke before, and I've known you a long time, so we've spoken at length before this point, but I thought it was really interesting to kind of hear your journey of how you got to that point. So tell me a little bit about kind of young Mike, late teens, kind of how you, because you're in fitness first, right? How you kind of got into that fitness sphere and then how that changed over time.
Well, initially I wanted to be a lawyer when I was at college.
Wow, okay.
That all changed when I studied law at A-level and realised that I hated doing law.
Right.
So I kind of needed something else to do.
Yeah.
I actually briefly considered the military, just my dad was in the Navy.
Okay.
Went to the military recruiting office, essentially didn't really love it. And my dad said to me, you ask too many questions and you don't like being told what to do. So the military probably isn't for you.
Fair point.
Which I think was very good advice.
Yeah.
But I didn't really want a conventional job. I didn't particularly, part of me liked the idea of being in the corporate world, working, I don't know, banking, something like
Sure.
that, taking home a big salary, a big bonus, suited and booted, going to the city every day.
Yeah.
But then part of me detested that idea as
Okay.
well. So I decided that I liked fitness. Why not be a personal trainer?
Okay.
And so after college, I think actually I did a basic fitness qualification at college.
Okay.
So like a gym instructor qualification.
Yeah.
And I had that and I thought, going to be a personal trainer. So I moved to London. I studied to be a personal trainer. It took about 3 months or so. And then I just got into working as a PT after that. Initially, I worked in a gym. So I was still on a self-employed basis.
Yeah.
But to be honest, I did that for about 18 months and it was really not very successful. Where I was in charge of getting my own clients as an 18-year-old, very introverted. I wouldn't say I was anxious, but I wasn't a natural salesperson. I didn't naturally talk to people. I really struggled to make conversation on the gym floor, to sign up clients. So I sort of gutted it out for about, 15 to 18 months or so. Then I decided, actually, this isn't really for me. I don't enjoy it.
Yeah.
Even on my good months living in London, everything that came in went straight back out.
Sure.
That was even just living in a shared house with 4 other people and place that was falling down and had a resident slug in the living room, so you can tell the state it was in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even with that, I was just about, struggling to survive, really. So I moved back to Southampton. And I still thought, I don't really want to be in a gym. I don't want to get a job just yet. I was half-heartedly looking at jobs on the side just in case I had to go that way. But I thought, do you know what? I'm back home, back in my hometown. I reckon if I can get everyone in my hometown to know who I am and the fact I do personal training, I should be able to get enough clients.
Sure.
And so actually what I did was I learned some basic SEO.
Okay.
And had a chat with a few people, got a bit of free business advice from friends' dads who are business owners and someone else who knew a bit about internet marketing, and essentially just started to get a bit busier, really. So I went from having no clients back home to a few people who'd been referred to me.
Yeah.
And it would have been within probably about a year, I was pretty much fully booked with PT clients.
Wow.
So,
And that all came from SEO?
Yeah,
or the vast
basically,
majority?
Yeah, a lot of it, and just sort of snowballed from there. And yeah.
So were you kind of in that era of personal trainer southampton.co.uk, web domains and that type of thing?
Yeah, so it was very much a case of, I think backlinking was the thing to do back in the day.
Yeah.
Whereby it was just all done organically, but I'd find relevant blogs and write a comment that was just long enough to not get triggered as spam, leave a website link. I think I set up a basic YouTube channel where I pretty much just filmed all my gym sessions, put it on there, linking it, optimize my Google profile, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so, if you typed in, I think personal trainer Hedge End, which was my town, I came out number 1. Personal trainer Southampton, I flitted between 1st and 3rd spot on there. And that was really the catalyst that started it, really.
And what year was this, roughly, do you think?
So I moved back to Southampton in 2010, I think, possibly 11. But I think, I was fully booked by about 2012.
Yeah, so it's the end. So the dot-com boom and bubble has already burst, and it's kind of that new wave of internet marketing where it was a little bit more democratized. It was a little bit more... any small business could do it if they knew the dark arts. Interesting. Very cool. So you were fully booked as a PT. Carry on.
Yeah, so I think it was about 2012. I was doing, I think my busiest week was 52 sessions in that week.
Wow.
And where I was doing it mobile as well, I was driving between people.
Yeah.
So I won't bore everyone with Hampshire place names, but I think on an average Monday where I had about 13 sessions, my first session was at 5:30 in the morning. I think I finished at 9:45 at night, and I could rack up about 110 miles alongside the PT.
Yeah.
Obviously trying to get my own training in as well.
Of course.
It got to the stage where I think my Mondays and Fridays is basically, if I've got a gap between 5:30 a.m. and 10 p.m, I'll train you. Saturday was 5:30 a.m. until, I think I had a cut off about 3 o'clock on a Saturday.
Okay.
And then Sunday it was between 8 a.m. and 12 p.m. I would train people.
Yeah.
And if I was free in that time, I just figured it was extra money.
Yeah.
Why not do it? But not surprisingly, got quite burnt out doing that for about a year and a bit.
How old were you then?
I would have been 22, 23.
Yeah, so it's a lot. Yeah, it's an awful lot. So you're fully booked, you're burnt out, you're doing your own training. So talk to me about what was your own training then? Were you strongman? What were you doing?
Yeah, I got into competing in powerlifting actually. So essentially, when I started personal training at the gym in London, I tried a bit of Olympic weightlifting, which, considering I've got the mobility of a wooden plank, wasn't the best thing. But it got me much more interested in training for strength as opposed to training for aesthetics.
Sure.
So I think I did about 11 or 12 powerlifting competitions in total. And yeah, during that time of being super busy, that was one thing I wouldn't budge on. So I made sure that I trained not every single day, but if I had a scheduled session, it got done regardless of how many clients I had, whether that was at the 24-hour gym, training at 4 a.m, whether it was at this hardcore bodybuilding gym that I used to go to and was very out of place, whether I was training there at 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
But for me, that was the one thing that never shifted really.
And and this is kind of skipping out of the sync of the story, but I think one of the things you just said there is one of the key things that I think defined you as a person who I've known over the last kind of 10, 12 years is like your non-negotiables and the things that you commit to, you very rarely step out of line with. And I think that's a really key point about you as a person. Where does that come from? Like, where does that kind of very committed, driven determination come from? Is that your dad's military background, do you think? Something else?
Honestly, don't know. That's a really good question, actually. But I think I wouldn't say I've always been like it.
Okay.
'Cause certainly at school, I wasn't particularly. I think it probably was that initial work ethic, sort of early 20s, of thinking, actually, I had very set goals. I wanted to get to a certain level of revenue in business.
Yeah.
I wanted to buy my first house by a certain age. And it's almost, I think some people might say this is an unhealthy way to look at it, but I almost felt a bit guilty or ashamed if I missed a training session, because to me, there are so many people in the world who would love to be able to train and be active, but who can't for physical reasons, for mental reasons. So in my book, it's kind of like, if you commit to doing that, it's sort of your duty to do it. And don't get me wrong, I'm not perfect. I might miss the odd session for certain reasons or not stick to a training plan. But for me, I always think, what might I think in, let's say, touch wood, if there's any wood in here, X many years down the line, I'm not able to train for some reason.
Yeah.
I'm going to look back and think, well, at least I got it in what I could do, essentially. So maybe a bit morbid to think that far ahead and think like that.
I don't think so.
Yeah, it's probably that reason, really.
No, I think it is one of the defining characteristics of all the people that I know who know you well, is your kind of determination, consistency. That is one of the things that always stands out and always that people comment on. So interesting to know. Cool. So we're 2012-ish. You're fully booked. You're 52 hours a week, 7 days a week pretty much, or 6.5 days a week. You're burnt out, tired. What's your home life like? Are you partner? Are you living at home still?
Yeah, so I moved back. When I moved back from London, I moved back in with my mum and her partner.
Yeah.
Sole reason being that, well, firstly, I get on really well with them.
Yeah.
So it's not one of those relationships where we're treading on eggshells or whatever.
Sure.
And secondly, because my goal was to get a house as soon as possible.
Yeah.
So my mum said, look, come back, stay for a bit, help out around the house, save your money, get a deposit ready.
Yeah.
And she wasn't fleecing me for rent every week and wasn't sort of hassling me to get out, but it's very much, she was incredibly supportive to help me build up the business and get on the property ladder.
Yeah, that's great.
To be honest, it probably helped in a way that I didn't see them that much from working too much, because I guess that is that thing where you move out and your parents probably think, well, that's them off, they've flown the nest, and then you end up coming back for a few years. It's maybe not everyone's ideal situation, but yeah, it certainly seemed to work out all right.
Good. So you get to 2012 and you're burnt out. What's the change? What are you looking at? What are you looking to do to get out of this situation? Because from what we've just discussed and your determination and your goals and whatnot, you being burnt out and stressed probably wasn't an area or a way of feeling that you enjoyed and wanted to stay in. So what's the route out for Mike at that point?
Yeah, well, initially I actually looked at becoming a strength and conditioning coach.
Okay.
With the idea of getting a job working for an elite sports team.
Okay.
I guess the couple of barriers to that were, firstly, you needed a specific qualification. And to get that qualification, you needed to have a degree. So there were a lot of sports teams that had vacancies, but you needed, I think it was the UKSCS or something like that. And not having a degree, that wasn't going to happen for me.
Sure.
And then also looking at how much S&C coaches were paid compared to players was actually pretty horrifying.
Yeah.
So I thought, I'd probably be taking a pay cut of about 50%.
Wow.
I might be having better hours, a better work-life balance, but it wasn't enough to sustain the lifestyle that I wanted, really. And ever since I started in fitness, I'd been reading websites like T Nation, I'd been reading Men's Health magazine, and I'd started to think, do you know what, there might be a good career to be made in fitness writing. And so actually on the side of PT, I was just tentatively looking for fitness writing work. So most days I would just do a Google search for fitness writing jobs just to see if anything else would come up. Again, knowing that it wouldn't be something that I could just leap into overnight and complete career switch, but was there a possibility to maybe do this alongside PT or at some point switch to it? Because I was following a lot of guys in the industry who I thought they seem to have the kind of lifestyle I want. And as much as I liked PT, got on really well with my clients, at the same time I thought, you know what, 5 years time, I just can't see myself still doing this.
Sure. Okay. So you're Googling jobs, you're looking for some writing gigs alongside it. How many different gigs did you take over that? What was it, a couple of years, a year before you got the kind of your big break in writing?
Yeah, I'd say it was probably less than a year.
Oh, okay.
And I took on a few small bits here and there, but it was literally, we'll pay you $10 for a blog.
Right.
And it's a 700-word blog on, I don't know, back pain or whole grain carbs versus white carbs. I think once I wrote a script and a mini audio book for someone that I think they paid me about $200 for, but I reckon it probably took about 5 days worth straight of work.
Yeah.
And they wanted me to record it as well. So I had to go to a friend's house who had some recording equipment. I think I even paid him 50 quid. So I ended up getting about £100 off a whole week's work. So it was good to be getting some work. But at the same time, I thought this kind of isn't doing what I need it to do.
I think you've got a really good audiobook voice. You would be good at that.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, there you go. That's quite a good one. I wonder if that copy exists anywhere now. Be interesting to find.
Do you know, it's for a Norwegian company. I don't know why they want it in English, but I suppose most Norwegians speak English as well. Sure. But it's probably out there somewhere if you look for it on the internet.
There we go. It's one's job. Cool. So you're picking up these writing gigs. You're doing a little bit. It's not paying that well. I guess, how do you feel at that point getting like 150, 100 quid jobs? Like, is that demotivating for you? Is it motivating for you because you at least getting the work? How do you feel at that point?
Probably more so the latter, because I value the fact that actually, for most of this, I could do it from my laptop from anywhere.
Sure.
And if I had a break between clients, it was a case of, okay, well, I can either just not do anything, or I can go and train, or I can actually earn some money. And so, whilst it wasn't mega bucks by any means, at the same time, it was, I think anyone who first earned some money from just sitting and writing on their laptop probably will remember that feeling of the first time you got paid for... At the time, I wasn't working in coffee shops so much, but let's just say sitting in a coffee shop and doing something that, you're not in an office, you're not on someone else's time clock for.
Yeah.
There was probably that idea of this isn't really scalable at this amount, but it was all, I think I saw it as a genuine opportunity to get out of personal training.
Yeah. My very first gig like that where I really thought, oh, I can make money from a computer was... Someone asked me to design a leaflet for them for a promotion for their beauticians. And it was a friend who had the beauticians, and the dad said, I'll pay you if you do this leaflet for her. I was like, okay. I did it. I was like, I got paid for messing around on probably Paint or something, Microsoft Paint at the time.
Nice.
Yeah, it was a weird time, that sort of early 2010s when this whole remote working digital thing was a thing probably, but we didn't know it was a thing, and we were just kind of making those first steps. Cool. So tell me about this big break in writing. You applied for a particular role and that you got. Tell me about how you found it and what it was and what have you.
Yeah, it was with a company probably most people know called Livestrong. So, well, it wasn't actually with Livestrong, but Livestrong had a content agency called Demand Media.
Right.
And they'd put a post out. Don't know where, I just came across it on Google. It was probably on Indeed or Monster or one of these sites. And it was just $20 an article, but you needed to write a couple of articles to apply. So I wrote them, sent them in, thinking nothing would come of it, and got an email saying, yep, great, we liked it, you can start. So I thought, cool, see what happens. And the way it worked was that you were put into, I guess it's kind of a portal whereby all the available article titles were put up, and you could claim articles. And I think you could claim up to about 10 articles at a time, and they would stay in your queue for about a week. If you didn't get them done, they go back into the main pool of articles. If you got them done, they went to an editor and would either be signed off or sent back to you with notes. And then if you submitted them a second time, they'd either be signed off, or if they weren't signed off, you just didn't get paid for that one.
Sure.
And I think to start with, I was probably doing about 3 or 4 articles a week. So, like I said, $20 a time, which was at the time probably £12-13. So, not major money. But the more I did, the faster I got. And actually, I could probably get 2, sometimes even 3 done in an hour, depending on how long it took. So that was sort of the catalyst for me of thinking, actually, I'm sitting in a coffee shop and I'm earning £25-30 an hour for doing something that doesn't really require me to be anywhere. I don't have to be counting someone's reps. I don't have to be super sociable and really upbeat and motivating. I can just sit here and do that work. Yeah, there were annoyances with it, like editors sending stuff back and you thinking, not really sure that warranted being sent back, or not getting paid for the odd article, that kind of thing. But on the whole, it was sort of the gateway into, okay, I can make money online and I can make money from writing. And it just kind of snowballed. And in the end, at their peak, there were pretty much more articles than you would be able to write available.
Wow.
So just whenever a client dropped off, I would just go and claim more articles, up to the point where I could probably get 25-30 done in a week alongside PT stuff. So I think after about 18 months or so, it was at that point where I was earning as much from doing that as I was from doing PT, and it was taking me less time. It was less mentally and physically draining.
Yeah.
And I didn't have the travel involved, didn't have the expenses involved.
You didn't have to be the traditional business owner at that point.
Yeah.
You didn't have to worry about sales, marketing, any of those things. You could just write.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Really interesting.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So really sort of the dream situation, really. So it wasn't that big break, because it wasn't like you're writing for big publications, but I also saw it as a bit of a stepping stone to thinking, well, actually, if I'm building this portfolio, if and when I do go to bigger publications, that's at least some social proof that I've been doing this, I can do it. I'm not just someone who's saying I can write for you. Here's this big stack of proof. Do you want to hire me?
Makes sense. Brilliant. So you did that for 18 months, a bit longer?
Yeah, about that, 18 months or so.
And how many articles roughly do you think you wrote in that time?
It would be in a couple of thousand, I reckon. So, yeah, probably not too far off that.
Brilliant. And so at that point, you're earning the same as you are in PT, but less mental capacity, physical exertion, time spent on the road, all those things that we just mentioned. So when was the kind of the switch moment for you? Was it at that point? Was it a little bit later on? Like, how did you start moving into more of a digital sphere? Because I know you moved into sort of looking more as an online coach at that point.
That would have been probably as I was getting more aware of the fact that this could be a thing, but equally being aware that this gig might not last forever. As in, when you're like 23 and you're making sort of £1,000, 1,500 quid a week from a mix of PT and writing, it's amazing. But I was also thinking, if this doesn't work out for whatever reason, then something's got to change. And I didn't particularly want to do more personal training. So I looked into doing online coaching, because I'd recently hired an online coach myself. And in those days, it was very sort of early days of it. I mean, I remember my coach sending me stuff on Word and Excel.
Yeah, it was the Joe Wicks programs back in the day used to come in like a PDF. It was just it was literally an ebook. You paid for it, and then you filled in some stuff, and then an ebook came out.
Yeah, there were no apps, nothing like that. No Zoom calls, no Loom videos. I just checked in with him once a week via email. Yeah. And I could see the potential of that, because I'm thinking, well, I've got people all over the country, just friends of friends and people on Facebook asking for advice. I could potentially monetize that. Yeah. So my first foray into online coaching was that I think I offered people 2 months of free coaching. Yeah. And said I would take 10 people, and I had about 50 people apply. Wow. So I think I managed to actually take on most of them. And then with the goal being that I would sign some of those people up as paid clients afterwards. I had this thing about money at the time where I definitely didn't value what I did enough. So I think my package after that was that you could train me for £40 a month online, so very cheap. But I think about 12 or 15 of those initial free trials took it up. So again, not massive money, but I was like, okay, I'm making, let's say, for argument's sake, an average of £500 a month extra from online coaching. This could also be a thing.
Sure.
And it was also the case that if a PT client dropped off, it's like, okay, do I want to replace them or do I want to go and get another online client? Actually, put my price up a bit. The online client makes more sense.
Sure. And then as an aside to that, you mentioned before about this writing thing might not last forever, and it didn't last forever, as you told me off camera. So talk to me about kind of that exit and that finishing up with Livestrong, how that happened, how it came about, etc.
I was actually fired for plagiarism, which I will say that it wasn't plagiarism. I had put the wrong book as a reference.
Okay.
So with all the articles we wrote, we had to provide at least 2 references, and it would either be an online article or something from a journal or a physical book. And I put down the right author, but the wrong book, and got a note back from the editor saying, I own this book. I can't see this claim anywhere in there. I forwarded this on to whoever it was, the head of content or whatever. Got an email from him the next day. All your writing permissions have been removed with immediate effect. They blocked my email address, so I couldn't even get into getting on his email to email them and say, can I appeal this? It was decision is final. And yeah, overnight, about 50% of my income was wiped away.
Feels like that was a bit more personal. Do you think there's something behind it or not?
Looking at what happened to the company in the sort of following 18 months or so, they were looking to get rid of writers. The demand for content wasn't there. I guess this would have probably been when social media was hotting up. So actually, companies are probably putting more into their organic social than into blogs, because this would have been about 2013, I think, where I know that I got more into Facebook around that stage. I was reading fewer and fewer long form blogs, so it kind of was expected to a degree.
Yeah.
But I think it was really any excuse to get rid of someone, let's do it.
And at that time, do you reckon you were kind of the top percentage of people who were delivering content to them, or were the people doing a lot more than you? Where do you think you sat in the hierarchy for them?
Yeah, probably up towards the top. We had a group of writers on Facebook that was more just a let's bitch and moan about the company. But I would say my volume was fairly high just because I was able to write fairly quickly. I stuck to fitness, which I knew and could almost do in my sleep, really. Yeah. And so, even though it wasn't a massive amount per article, I think by that point, I'd gone up to about $30 an article. Yeah. So, 50% pay bump.
There you go.
But still not mega bucks, but not to be sniffed at that age either.
Of course.
So I was earning a reasonable amount from them. And I think they just thought, actually, if anyone trips up, cool, we can save some money here.
Yeah, and if we can chop out one of the top earners, it's a big chunk saved.
Yeah.
What always, especially when you talk about that in context as to now, and that whole business model, the whole thing about content, the whole model with Livestrong, that was before the adage of AI or anything like that. So you were doing that work, you're doing the research by hand, in effect. You sat there and researching it yourself, you're writing the article yourself, and you're publishing it. Whereas now, I think any new writer coming in, even if they're just writing for themselves, can ask questions of AI, get source material quite quickly to spin up an angle or a slant. And it's, I guess, you having that experience and doing those things for a period of time at least gives you some chops in that respect, whereas now it's a lot easier.
Oh, massively, yeah. I think you learn the skill or the art of writing when you actually have to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, I am a fan of AI for certain things. I think it's awful for other things. From a marketing and copy perspective, there's just some stuff that it just can't do.
Sure.
But for, general blogging, general content, it's very, very good. But it's kind of that you have to learn to do it yourself in order to know what's wrong with an AI's output, if that makes sense. So I definitely think that, spending 18 months to 2 years writing articles daily, you get an advantage.
Brilliant. So Livestrong comes to a very abrupt end for you. You've already got into online coaching. You've got these sort of 12, 13, 15 clients. Cool. So what happens then? Where do you go from there? Because you lost 50% of revenue, you said.
Yeah, I gave myself 24 hours just to sulk and just
definitely.
To get pissed off, because I think that's never a bad thing. I think you're better off just allowing yourself to be annoyed, feel what you need to feel, and then crack on with a solution.
Yeah.
But like you said, I had the online clients, and essentially I thought, I've got 2 years I can go here. I can take on more personal training clients, which would have been relatively easy to do, but I didn't want more early mornings. I'd already managed to cut my PT hours down to about probably 30 a week by this point.
Yep.
Didn't want to go north of that at all.
Sure.
So I thought, okay, online's where it's at. But I think because I myself had started buying digital products online as well, mostly ones around powerlifting and weightlifting, ebooks, that kind of thing. I'd actually written an ebook that I just hadn't done anything with.
Right.
And I thought, do you know what? I've got a bit of an email list there who I'd built up that list and just been emailing them just random fitness stuff, basically once or twice a week, just because I thought it's a good way to hone my writing a bit more.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, I've got this ebook here. Why don't I actually get that done properly, like covers, edited, whatever, and put it out there and see if I can make some sales from it? Because that would be, in a way, truly passive. Yes, passive income's never properly passive, but online coaching is great because I can do it from anywhere, but it's still, the work increases depending on the number of people you've got.
Sure.
Whereas in an ebook, the work doesn't really increase whether you sell 5 copies or 5,000. So had this ebook ready to go, had this ebook written, then went and got it designed, got it edited, and put it out there to that email list of about 1,000 people. And didn't know how it was going to go. Priced it at $19, I think, so about £12. And I just broke £1,000 in sales on the first day. And that was, at the time, I mean, it was more than I'd ever earned in a day by a long, long way.
Sure.
And that was my, what would you call it? Epiphany?
Yeah, aha moment.
Aha moment's probably a bit less grandiose, so we'll go that one. That was my aha moment that actually, you can earn money with passive products. Like, you don't need to be hands-on with every single thing. Yes, there's going to be some different challenges to this, but what if I just work on scaling this? Like, you can't build a single business off one £12 product, but you've got scope there to build that out into a product arsenal, to get people upsold into coaching from that. And so that was really the thing for me, where I'm like, okay, let's make sure this isn't just a one-off thing. Where can we go from here with it?
Cool. So whereabouts do you think you were in terms of pricing for your online coaching at that point? Had you moved it up from the 40 quid, or you're probably still around there?
I think, I couldn't tell you for definite. I reckon I was probably around about sort of £70-80 a month.
So it's still like, you've still brought in far and away like 10 clients worth of revenue in a day. Yeah, for the month. So pretty big step. Okay, cool. So is this now the birth of the website of HL? Is that the birth of it pretty much?
Yeah, so again, I've been doing the odd blog on the website. So if people don't know, it's called Healthy Living Heavy Lifting, which I still think is the worst
so
best name in the...
So bad. So bad it's good. Our mutual friend Dan Meredith, who we'll come on to actually in a little while, still takes the piss out of that name every time it comes up in conversation.
So normally shortened to HLHL, but I'd had that website. My friend from school and college ran a design agency, so they'd set me up with a website probably about a year ago, just so that I could blog for myself, really. Yeah. But we sold it through there, and then that was when I thought, okay, let's take this a bit more seriously. Let's actually get into blogging regularly. I didn't have to do the work for Livestrong anymore, so I had more time to blog. I think I was specifically making an effort to blog 3 times a week. Yeah. I had a look at some sales copy and stuff, and sort of put a bit more effort into how I was trying to sell my coaching services. Still didn't really know what copywriting was at the time, but I was aware of the fact that you needed to try to sell. You couldn't just say to people, I'm an online coach, pay me this amount a month. You had to talk about fat loss, weight loss, how you're going to feel, the problems you've got at the moment, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So I started to just put a bit more effort in, really, in order to drive more people to the website, to get more people to either buy the book or sign up as a client.
Awesome. So what happened? What was the next launch after that 12 quid ebook?
Things kept on going pretty well. That was in the days where you could get a lot of organic traffic to a Facebook business page. My Facebook business page was, I think, about 21,000 at its peak. So you could very easily get people off Facebook onto your website for no money. Yeah. Obviously now that's very, very different, but make hay while the sun shines, as the saying goes.
Yeah, definitely.
And the business was growing quite well. Personal training clients were coming down slightly. just because, like with anything, you get a natural drop off. So I still had people who I've been training at that point for 3, 4, 5, maybe even, no, I think about 5 years would have been the most someone had been with me. But certainly longer term clients, they stayed on. And then just as someone dropped off, I just put a bit more effort into the online side of things, to the point where I think online was probably earning me about double what one-to-one work was. And I knew I needed to scale up in terms of revenue, but also just do things a bit better in terms of operations. And so I put a post out on Facebook saying, does anyone know anyone who can help me do this? Because my business knowledge is okay, but I'm entirely self-taught, don't know what I don't know, looking to hire a mentor. And that was when a few people said, Dan Meredith, who you mentioned a minute ago.
Yeah.
And I reached out to him. We had a long chat. I said, cool, can I hire you? He said, nope, because you'll be super excited right now. You'll just want to pay me some money, have 24 hours to think about it, and get back to me if you still do. 24 hours came and went. I still wanted to hire him. So, I hired him and we started working on my online business together.
And what year do you think this was about? 14, 15?
That would be, summer 2014, I think that would have been.
So 10 years ago, pretty much to the date.
Yeah, more or less, yeah.
Yeah,
not
which
far
is crazy to think about. So you and Dan started working on HL together, mentor-mentee. And how did that go? What was the plan with that? How did you start changing? How did you start doing different things?
First thing he did with me was do I think it was a Dan Kennedy assessment or a J. Abraham assessment. And it worked out kind of how well your business was doing versus what potential it had. And I think I got a score that basically said you're doing very, very well despite doing a lot of stuff wrong. Which is basically just, I think, I was working hard, putting out lots of content, just not doing it particularly smartly.
Yeah.
So we started to dial a lot of that stuff in. He put me in touch with someone to run some paid ads for me. So that was the first time that I did some paid traffic.
Yeah.
And things with that just started to grow a bit more. Again, it's all been very organic. There's never been like one thing necessarily. It's been a massive spike. But that started to grow quite well. But at the time, Dan was running a copywriting agency. And I don't remember the exact details, but it came about that we had a chat and he said, look, I need a bit of help with client work here. Your blogs are great. You obviously make all right money from your email list. You kind of get copywriting, even though you don't really know what it is.
Yeah.
Do you want to come and do some work for my agency? So I said, yep, why not? It was good money. I liked him. I liked the idea of a new challenge. And that was when I properly got into copywriting for the first time, really. So I worked with him on a retainer basis. It would basically be he went out and got the clients. He communicated with them. I would do the bulk of the work. And then he would sort of polish everything, edit it, send it back to the client, handle all that side of things.
Yeah.
And so we did that quite successfully for probably a good 7 or 8 months, I reckon it would have been.
So let's just pause there for a second. So if we think about that journey from 2012 being fully booked PT, stressed out, tired, burnt out, getting into writing to now summer, maybe a little bit past summer. Where are we now? 2015 maybe?
Yeah, early 2015.
So in 3 years, you've gone from not really writing at all to 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 articles for Livestrong, paid reasonably well for it in terms of the volume, to now in 3 years just of doing the reps, like writing articles, becoming very good at that, to now you're taking a retained position in a marketing agency or a copywriting agency to work with bigger clients, quite big clients. We'll talk about that in a minute, but to work with clients. So that's the journey in 3 years. Cool. And I think that's testament again to you just doing the reps, spending the time, honing the craft, and actually committing time to something without any. I think the one thing with you is you've not really got much in the way of fear of something going wrong because you just do the work. I think that's always been a something that I've admired about the way that you work is you've not really got much in the way of nervousness about it because you're like, well, if I do all these things, I do them consistently for a period of time, the end result will come anyway. And that's probably testament to it is that 3 year period of going from never written anything really in anger to a retained copywriting position.
Well, I guess just on that one, it's been, my stance is probably twofold. One being there's always someone you can go to for help.
Yeah.
Even if you have to pay that person for help, there is that option.
Yeah.
And secondly, it's that, I don't think I'd never used this phrase until probably a year or so ago, but it's the idea that it's better to regret the things you did do than the things you didn't. So I've had it before. I've not taken an opportunity or not tried something, and looking back, it's depending on the situation, but it can be quite painful to think what would have happened had I done that.
Sure.
Whereas if you go and try something, it doesn't work. At least you know, okay, I tried that, it didn't work. That's a lot less painful than the thought of what if in my book.
Definitely. So you are with Dan now. You're kind of working in copy. Give me some of the like highlights, the keynotes from you working in that copywriting agency, some of the clients. I know you did some trips abroad and whatnot.
The big one was definitely, we went to a conference in Chicago. So it was a big conference for all the top people in the sort of supplement world, I guess.
Okay.
A lot of we had companies there like Organifi, people who'd bought companies off Russell Brunson. There's some big YouTube guys. And went along to that being very nervous, very apprehensive.
Sure.
Kind of thinking, what are we doing here? I know I was thinking, what are we doing here? But
Dan probably wasn't.
No, I think he's probably delighted to be
that's Dan there. That's Dan for you though.
Around those people. But we went with the idea of not pitching people, we're just getting to know people.
Yeah.
And essentially saying, look, we're copywriters, we can help you. If you want to hire us, come and hire us, let's have a chat. And I think there's a lot to be said for doing that in person, especially huge. When you're the only two Brits who've made the trek across the pond. I think they sort of really appreciated that. And what surprised me a lot was that everyone there was, I mean, probably the person doing the lowest amount of revenue in that room was still doing about £3-4 million or dollars a year.
Wow. And
I'd always thought those kinds of people are probably going to be very much closed books. They're going to be, well, I'm sort of doing this, but, you know, we can't reveal everything we're doing. It was the exact opposite. Everyone was going, oh, this is working really well for us. Maybe here's how it could work in your business. And so that for me was a massive eye-opener that maybe it's a British-American thing as well. I do think Americans are more open to sharing that kind of stuff. And
100%.
Without speaking ill of my fellow Brits, I think often we don't necessarily want people to have the same success as us when we achieve something, which is something that I really admire about American culture more so. But yeah, we met a load of great people and still keep in touch with a lot of them today, actually.
Really?
Even yesterday I was speaking to one of them via email, talking about potentially working together.
Wow.
So that trip brought a lot of business for both of us and for me as well. And then I think just the opportunity as well. I mean, it opened my eyes again to how much money can be made. Not in the sense of just charge people whatever the heck you want and then you've got the money, don't worry about what comes next. But people who, they would pay you 10 grand for a sales page, they then go and make 250 grand off it. And you can see, okay, there's a way where everyone can win here.
Sure.
So yeah, working with the big names, seeing the amount of money, it sort of took off, what would I say? I guess I had a bit of a handbrake on charging more for myself.
Yeah.
But doing that showed me, okay, people actually often respect you more when you charge more as well. And it's almost like if you go and pitch someone and they say, we want this whole funnel done, and you say, oh, it's going to be 2K, they're a bit wary of that because that's very cheap for that work. Whereas if you say it's 15K, that automatically shows that you've got confidence in you. So alongside all the actual money that was made and the clients we helped, for me, that was the mindset portion was probably the biggest thing.
Brilliant. So talk to me about how your copywriting career kind of took off from there, because I know you spent some time with Dan in his agency, and then you started getting some of your own clients, your own leads, your own stuff. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, just from organically posting about what I was doing on Facebook was a big thing.
Yeah.
I've always quite liked social media. I know some people will hate it. For me, no, it's a good place as long as you don't take it too seriously. I'm quite nosy. I like reading what people are up to. I think other people are the same.
Yeah.
So just from telling my story and posting about what I was doing, people were reaching out to ask about copy. So I started picking up some clients for myself. Dan started going in a slightly different direction. He launched his Facebook group, Coffee with Dan.
Yeah.
He started going more down the route of, I guess, more general business coaching, if that makes sense, sort of business mindset, productivity, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Which is kind of what he's known for now, if you think about it.
Yeah, 100%. I think that just meant that whilst we, again, didn't get rid of any clients. It just so happened that that side of things petered out, really. But at the same time, I've been getting some clients of my own, still doing a bit of fitness work as well, just because that was my bread and butter.
Yeah.
But I think within probably a few months, I'd replace the money that I was making with Dan with money from separate projects as well.
Yeah.
And then I found, and I've seen that with so many other people now as well, that the more work you do, the more it snowballs. If you get work for one client, they'll talk to a friend or someone else in the industry. And you only have to be a tiny bit proactive with asking people to make introductions.
Yeah.
It's actually not that difficult to get business. If you're doing a good job and you're easy to work with, I just found that, I ended up, I wouldn't say more business than I knew what to do with, but it was rare where I was in a situation where I thought, I need a client soon, just because I had those relationships, really.
Perfect. So you alluded to it there. So you're still having some cash coming in from fitness. Talk to me about that kind of pivotal moment when you had to kind of make a decision, because I'm assuming that had come up pretty quick.
2016-ish, I reckon it would have been.
Yeah.
Yeah, latter end of 2016.
Yeah.
I was in the point where still had some one-on-one PT clients, just because they'd not dropped off and I liked them.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think I was doing about 12 or 14 sessions a week, I suppose. Still had about 20 online clients as well, just because they were all happy and I quite liked working with them.
Yeah.
And then copy was taking up about 50% of my time. And I wouldn't say I decided to just completely pull the plug on fitness stuff, but I did decide I'm not taking on any more online clients. Any one-on-one people I was working with, outside of, I think I carried on with one or two other people for a very short period of time. But I said to them, look, business is going this direction now. And I'd imagine, again, I forget all the details, but I think I probably put a couple of posts out on Facebook just saying, look, here's what I'm doing. Here's the situation. If you want copy work done, let me know. I'm sure I phrased it a bit better than that, but that was the general gist of it. And I think my income probably took a hit for 2 or 3 months and then managed to build it back up to where it was before, but working a bit less overall.
Sure.
And with a lot more freedom, because now it was all laptop based.
Yeah. Brilliant. So we're 2016, you said.
Yep.
You went into copy full time. Talk to me about how, what did you do to go and get clients? I know you said about referrals and that type of thing. Like, who were you working with at that point? What types of things were you doing?
So it's pretty much around that time that I got my maybe the biggest client I've ever worked with, I'd say. Certainly the longest client I've worked with. So I started working at Clients on Demand.
Yeah.
So if people who don't know, they're a business coaching company, essentially, run by a guy called Russ Ruffino. And their whole thing is helping coaches charge $3,000 to $10,000 for a program. I got a gig with them actually doing copy coaching for people going through their program. So I'd be critiquing their staff, helping them out with webinars, Facebook ads, emails, that kind of thing, and doing some coaching calls as well. So I picked that up. And what I liked about that was that, again, it had a lot of freedom to it. So I think I had to show up for like 2 or 3 calls a week in the beginning, but that was no massive deal at all, really. But again, I could do that from pretty much anywhere in the world. And it would be a case of log on for 2 hours in the morning, critique some copy, write some copy, answer some questions. That was that done. And even though a lot of people talk about like not wanting to be tied down to one client, I actually found, because of the way that worked, I liked the safety net and the security of having a consistent income from one client.
Yeah.
So I ended up working with them for close on 8 years, I think, in the end. So they're my big one. And then it was just a case of actually, like I said, talking about what you're doing there, talking about what you're doing with other clients. That was mostly how I got clients, really. It was rare. I definitely did send pitches to people. Yeah. But I also think that if you can get business just on reputation on your network, that's absolutely the best way to do it. Yeah. And for the next few years, it was a case of just being really busy with freelance clients, really. So having anywhere up to about 6 or 7 people at once. And then I think the fewest I had at one time was probably about 3 clients, I reckon, maybe 2 with a couple of one-off projects on the top.
Yeah, well, it's at that time that we started working together. So you came into my agency as our kind of copy resource for our clients. So we were working with fitness businesses across the world at that point. I introduced you to some of the people in my field, and vice versa. You introduced me to a lot of people within yours. So, I think that point was again, a really exciting time to be in that digital copy paid marketing sphere, because there was so much opportunity. There were so many people with cool businesses that wanted help from people like us. So at that point, so we're 2016-ish now, and you've probably spent, close to 10 years writing copy as we come into this year. So talk to me about that journey. I know that we've got this big sphere and spectre of COVID looming into this story. So, you do a few more years in copy, you're working with clients, you're earning good money from all accounts. Like, what are the next sort of moves that you make when it comes to your career and your business?
Yeah, I really enjoyed all the client work I was doing, but again, I guess I could just see that there was not more to be made, so to speak, but it could be done smarter.
Yeah.
I did try and build an agency for a bit. Didn't really like that at all.
Sure.
In terms of, I just found I was the middleman, and the bit I like about copy is the creative part, really. And that's actually when you're building an agency, I found the bit I had to outsource. So I'd be more winning the clients, coordinating with someone who's working for me, critiquing their work and passing it back to clients. And they're all the bits I don't enjoy as much.
Sure.
So I realised that an agency was a good business model, but it probably wasn't for me, at least not in that respect.
Yeah.
So one thing I did was I started charging equity on some projects, so getting a percentage of sales, because that to me seemed like a smart move, because if the client's winning and they can pay you a bit more money as well, then you're both winning. So that was just almost a no-brainer, really. Doesn't work on every project, but I think if you can do it, it's worth doing it. But I also wanted a bit more income diversity.
Okay.
And I'd always been super aware that a lot of people do a thing, and you see this in fitness a lot. They do a thing, have a bit of success with it, and then go, right, now I'm going to teach that thing to other people.
Yeah.
So part of me was hesitant about doing a course, but because I'd actually, one thing I missed was I just started building a copywriting email list as well.
Sure.
So that was about 2016, 17, I think. And I think I sold a couple of digital products initially, but by far the majority of what I sent out was just value, no pitch.
Yeah.
And I could see there were so many people who wanted to learn copywriting, but there are a few issues. It was either that all the courses were super expensive, like 5K, 10K. They were very, very American, and there's nothing wrong with that at all.
No.
I think about 30% of the people who've bought into me in the past have been American. Most of my clients are American, but I just felt there was a gap in the market for something a bit more British.
Well, the other thing was they were super boring. I remember buying I can't remember which, you'll know which one it is, where you just had to copy a sales letter every day.
Yeah.
Fuck me. I did like 3 days and was like, no, I'm out.
Yeah.
Suck did it. My business partner did it, and fair play. Like he's got really good copy chops now from doing it. But it's just not, if you're not that way inclined, you're not going to resonate with it at all. So, okay, so you thought about a digital product in the copywriting space.
Yeah, and I just think that the other thing was a lot of them were quite low quality in terms of they either taught you how to get clients, but then they didn't teach you how to do the work, or they taught you how to do the work, but then you're like, well, how do I get clients? So that was my thing of I need to address both those problems with a course. What matters to me? Well, it's not necessarily the writing copy part. I see copy 100% as a vehicle to get you somewhere. I really enjoy it, but like I said at the start, if actually I did something different, I wouldn't particularly mind. I love copywriting from the creative aspect, but I don't see myself as, a copywriter per se.
Sure.
So I thought, well, if I can incorporate that aspect of having freedom as well as making good money from this, then I think that's something people would want. And so I think it was April 2019, I first put the course out there. So the Freedom Kickstarter course. And I think in that first intake, we had about 71, 72 people come on board with it.
It shows there was an appetite.
Yeah.
Yeah, a huge one. Cool. And so tell me a little bit about, it's not a pitch, this is a podcast, but tell me a little bit about what the Freedom Kickstarter is.
Yeah, so the premise is that it helps copywriters earn £350 plus per hour and command equity deals. Even if you've got all this AI stuff, even if you're not a natural writer, even if you're an introvert, I make it very clear that it's for people who are brand new to it, people who are a bit more intermediate, already got some copy experience as well. And essentially my thing was I need something that is fully comprehensive, but not overwhelming. So in the course, I teach people how to do mostly emails and ad copy, because I think they're the easiest things to get paid for.
Yeah.
Also landing pages. We do touch on sales pages, so I think it's good to be able to know how to do them, and they tend to pay the most as well. So it's good from that respect. And then just teaching people how to get business. So there's a bit about cold pitching. Again, very much aware that we need to stand out with cold pitching, because I'm sure everyone watching this, if they've got any kind of business, will have had a terrible cold pitch probably in the last week.
Yeah.
So it's not like that at all. Talk about in-person networking, building like a personal brand, getting business off social media, and then also the lifestyle factor as well, as in how do you actually manage your time as a copywriter? How do you have that freedom that everyone talks about, yet so many people end up just creating a very stressful job for themselves? So that's sort of the premise of it, really, in terms of, most people who go through it and do the work, you tend to see earn anywhere between about sort of 5 and 15K a month. Wow. Not saying that that's, the absolute gold standard. It's not a guarantee. I think it depends how hard people work. Sure. But we've certainly had some very successful students. Some have done more. Some don't do quite as much as that. But I always say, look, it's not a course. If you want to be an A-list copywriter, it's not the course for that, because I'm not an A-list copywriter. Likewise, if you just want a £500 a month side hustle, or you want something that you just sit there and do no work for and hopefully make some money, it's not that either. It's the people who are willing to put the effort in, but they value freedom as much, if not more so, than they value just pure cold hard cash.
Brilliant. So that's April, first cohort 71. What are you doing? You're doing launches for it? Was it just always open?
Yeah, I did some launches for it. So the first launch I did for it, people could essentially get what I said would be the lowest price it would ever go for. And then later that year, I think I did one more launch later that year. Didn't really grow the list at all in that time, maybe slightly, but I think we had another 40 people signed up in the second launch. Yeah. And then I think it was very start of 2020, I did a third launch where I think we had about 35 more people come on. So yeah, first year we had about just under 150, I think, signed up in the first year.
Great. So then that 150 happens. Obviously, you get into COVID times. So what happened during COVID? Obviously, I know the story, but tell us a little bit about what happened then. I know you launched a new product in the April.
Yeah, 2019, I put on my first in-person event, which was a free event for everyone who signed up for the course, which I still do every year. I just like to get people together. Yeah, definitely. And chatting with people, the feedback was, love the course, got some good results from it, but sometimes I feel like I would like a bit more help when I've got a client. Or sometimes I feel like I know what I'm doing, but I just want that bit of extra confidence that I'm definitely doing it right and I'm not wasting my time. I'm not going to be going down dead ends and doing all this, that, and the other. And so I'd been doing some copy coaching one-on-one with people as well. Quite enjoyed it, but it wasn't massively scalable. And I had one of my clients at the time, a coaching client, a guy called Jamie. He said to me, what do you think about starting a coaching program? He was at this event as well and had been talking to people and got the same kind of thoughts from them. If I'm honest, I'd never really wanted to launch a coaching program because I, again, value my freedom. I was going to say I don't like responsibility. That's not true. But I didn't want to be solely responsible for someone else's success in business. Yeah. So I was very picky about who I took on as a one-on-one client. But I thought, you know what, if I do this with someone and we can kind of help each other out, then I think that'd be a good way to do this. Yeah. So Jamie and I actually partnered up and we said, okay, let's do it. It's for people who've gone through the Freedom Kickstarter. And what we're going to do is basically put together a support group for people. So we do teach a bit more as well, but I'm always very clear to say to people, look, if you've got the Freedom Kickstarter course, FKS Pro is not like it's not a magic trick. It's not, oh, this stuff wasn't included in the course. This is the real stuff you want. It's very much, if you're like me and you value support, accountability, guidance, and maybe a bit of an arse kicking from time to time, that's the thing to go to. If you're perfectly fine with the course, totally good. You're fine with that. But yeah, Jamie and I launched in April 2020. So I think the world, or at least the UK, had been in lockdown for about a month, which was a good thing and a bad thing from a business perspective. As in, bad thing, people were clearly quite worried about money and about income. But at the same time, I think people were craving community, craving interaction. And so Jamie and I said to the 150 people who'd done the FKS course, we put on a few free classes where we did a slightly more higher level training. I think we interviewed a few of the really successful people who'd done the course. And at the end of each, we just did a low-key pitch, basically saying, look, here's what we're thinking of. If you'd like to join, let us know. I think we had a sales page for it. It's quite a short sales page. We did most of the delivery we did via email and via our live trainings. But I think we got 32, 33 people sign up in that first cohort.
Wow.
And I think about 8 of those are still with us today, 4 and a bit years down the line.
Wow.
So that was the birth of FKS Pro.
Cool. So we're at 2020 now, and things kind of carried on in that trajectory. You grew, and then continued to grow Freedom Kickstarter. You grow Freedom Kickstarter Pro. You're still working with some clients. So talk to me a little bit about kind of where you are now with FKS and FKS Pro and your events and that type of thing.
Without sounding really boring, both have just continued to grow quite steadily.
Yeah.
I don't have set goals every year necessarily, but for me, just from a personal standpoint, most years income goes up by about 10% and my workload goes down by about 10%.
Nice.
Which I think actually, if you look at a lot of stuff, if you look at investing, that's the way you win in investing. It's just those consistent small gains. So yeah, these days I still, like I said at the start, really, I still probably spend 50% of my time doing client work. Most of those clients are now different to what they were a few years ago. But again, if you've got a good network, then why would you not be able to move around, have different clients and whatnot? And then about 50% of my time is spent on FKS stuff as well. So Jamie and I have carried on growing the group. Certainly in terms of the course, I've done a few revamps of it. So as we're speaking, I've just done finishing up another revamp where, again, I just feel that everything in the original course still works and is still relevant. But at the same time, I'm aware that things do change to a degree. In terms of the actual process of writing copy, they don't particularly, as in human psychology has been hardwired for millennia, and that's not going to change anytime soon. So all those behavioral psychology principles are still the same, but some things are a bit different, like pitching. I've updated it so everything has got AI prompts in there as well. Obviously, you still need to know the mechanics and the reasoning behind the copy for that to work, but when you've got something like AI even, I feel like if you can use that to your advantage, why would you not? So yeah, that's essentially where we're at now. Is 50% of my time is still client work, 50% of my time is FKS stuff, really.
Brilliant. And just give us some rough numbers. Don't need to get into monetary ones, but how many people have been through the FKS program since you launched it?
I think we've had about 450 in total go through. Yeah, and there's been anything from, I think the record month anyone's told me about has been about 45k in revenue, which is great. And I'm always very honest that some people buy it, don't do anything with it. You get the same with gym memberships, you get the same with business coaching, you get the same with whatever. But yeah, it's been great to see people's progress. I think at last count, I believe about 70 people are now full-time copywriters from it, which is for me that makes my day, really. Like seeing some of the case studies and testimonials, like you say, not going to turn this into a pitch, but people were saying like, now I organise my work day around picking up the kids from school, going to the gym, grabbing lunch with my wife. The time left over is when I work, whereas normally for most people it's the other way around. So that kind of thing, I'm like, that's really cool. That's what I wanted when I set out with this.
Amazing. And what about FKS Pro? How many people have you got in that program right now?
So we tend to go for around about sort of the 30 to 40 mark, just because we found that's a nice manageable number. As in, both Jamie and myself have been in mentoring programs where they've been sort of 100 odd people, and it's just, I wouldn't say they don't work, but it's much more difficult to get personal attention. So we now have another coach who works with us as well, a guy called Alex. So he helps out just so we can get slightly quicker turnaround times for people, so that people aren't waiting. And also from a selfish standpoint, so that if one of us wants to have a week or two off, we can do that.
Sure.
And so actually we keep the group running 50 weeks of the year. We have 2 weeks off over Christmas. I think that's just important for everyone in the group as well, to have a break from from working quite so hard. But yeah, so we keep it around that mark deliberately, just because I think that I've found with stuff before, sometimes you think scaling is the answer, and actually it's not always the answer. So it's like, we're perfectly happy with it. there's an argument that could be made saying this could be even bigger and better if we went bigger, but I'm just not sure I'd want to do that, in all honesty.
Sure. Great. So that wraps up kind of everything around you and your career and where we're at right now. So I hope everyone found that really interesting. I just wanted to wrap up with talking about you and your running. So at the same time as you kind of launch in FKS, you got into running. So we talked about you in strength, powerlifting, all those types of things. And I've always known you as someone who is very strong in the gym a lot. And then kind of out of left field for me, you'll probably tell me the background, you started running in about 2020, is that right? 2019?
Yeah, I think in one of the lockdowns, I just got bored of doing exercising in the garden.
Sure.
So I had some very basic weights, but anything, it just got very dull very quickly, really. So I started running. I'd run a bit in school. I'd done the odd 10K and that kind of thing. Then hardly run between the ages of about 22 and 30. Started running. I thought, you know what? I'm going to sign up for the New Forest Half Marathon, just down the road from me. So I hired a coach who I'd known actually from years ago. One thing we didn't talk about was I briefly worked part-time in a running shoe shop while I was starting my PT journey back in Southampton.
There you go.
Hired him because he was a running coach, did the New Forest Half, and I thought, I know, I'll go and do a marathon. And then I was actually listening to a podcast with Ross Edgley, and I heard Ross say, doing a marathon is cool, but if you do an ultra, it's only a bit longer and it sounds a lot cooler. I was like, yep, that logic makes sense to me. So I then went and signed up for a 24-hour race. And my running coach said, you might want to have something in between that because 24 hours is a big step up from running a 1:35 half marathon. So I booked in for a race called Race to the King, which was Goodwood back to Winchester near me. That was, I think it was 53.5 miles. And then after that, I just got the bug, really. I mean, I kind of love/hated every minute of it. It was amazing and awful in equal measures.
So hang on, you went from a half marathon to 53?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I skipped out the marathon in the middle. I think I did the half in September and to be fair, there was a fair bit of time. I think it wasn't until May or June the next year. So I had about 8 months or so.
Right, so some training in there.
Yeah. But yeah, just thought, I think I worked up to about 28 miles in training and then thought, let's go and do this double marathon.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just kind of gone from there. So every year I've put in, I think, at least a couple of 100-milers each year, done a few different bits that incorporate weightlifting stuff as well.
Talk to us about the 100-milers. So give me some examples of those because I think they very much impress me. So it might do some of your listeners to this podcast.
I've done a few different styles of hundreds. There's been a couple where they're looped events. So you have a time cap and the idea is you run as far as you can in that time. So I've done, I think, 3 of those, worked up to about 124 miles was the most.
Okay.
Also done one a couple of times down in Cornwall. There's a race called the Arc of Attrition.
Yeah, this is the one that always scares me.
Yeah, it's generally considered normally the joint hardest 100-miler in England.
Okay.
It's joint with one called the Lakeland 100 in the Lake District. And it's run in end of January, so in the middle of winter, basically. And it's just all around the Cornish coastline. So I will say I've been fortunate for the fact that the last 2 Januaries, the weather's been pretty good for it. I think last year it dropped just below freezing for a bit overnight, but it was pretty dry. I mean, it was still, at some point, you're up to your waist in mud and water. But yeah, the conditions on it have been a lot worse than that in the past. But that's been sort of that was my, maybe not bucket list race, but I did it one year, completed it and was kind of happy with my time, but knew I could do better. So I put a lot into training for that one last year to get under 24 hours for that one.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, the other ones I've done, I did the South Downs Way 100 quite recently. And then I also did one where I did a 1,000-pound powerlifting total and then went and ran 100 miles after that. So yeah, that's the most interesting challenge I've done.
So 1,000-pound powerlifting challenge. Talk me about the weights bit. So what did you do there?
So I think we worked out it was something like, I'm going to have to do the pound to kilo conversion here, but it was basically, I did a 155 kilo squat, 110 kilo bench press, and a 190 kilo deadlift. I think worked out to just over the 1,000 pounds.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, went and just ran 100 miles around Hampshire. So designed a route that started from the gym, actually finished at my mate's gym over in Portsmouth. Interestingly, the route was actually, I think it was 99.2 miles. So I had to then go another half mile up the road, turn around and come back just to make sure it was 100. But
Nice.
yeah, I did that in, I think it was about 20, just over 20 hours, I think it took to do all that.
And was there a charitable arm to that one? Is that right?
Yeah, so that was the first time I raised money for charity doing it. So I raised, I think it was just under £3,000 for Macmillan doing that one. And then, yeah, I've recently started raising money for Make Seconds Count, who are they're another cancer charity specialising in secondary breast cancer.
Yeah. So talk to me about the fundraise for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a charity that's a cliche phrase, but close to my heart because I've got a family member who's going through it at the moment.
Sure.
And for me, the secondary breast cancer particularly, it's one of those where I think because we've come such a long way with cancer, it still has obviously a massive, like, you hear that and it's terrifying. But sometimes I think you're talking to people and they almost downplay cancer because the prognosis is so good now based on modern medicine. And I think with secondary cancer, people often don't even really know what that is, but it's essentially terminal cancer. The science side of it, I don't think I know well enough to explain, but you can mitigate it, you can prolong life, but there's no actual cure for it.
Yeah.
And when I was looking into it, secondary breast cancer is actually the biggest killer of women under 50 in the UK. Wow. But it only receives about 7% of overall cancer funding. Right. So to me, it's like, okay, it's worth shedding a bit of a light on that, raise some more money for it. And so, yeah, I also figured people tend to not mind donating stuff when you're doing things that are quite difficult. And so for my next race, it's 215 miles. So I thought, well, hopefully people won't mind chucking a few quid in a pot for a charity that does good stuff.
Yeah, so what's the race?
It's the race across Scotland. So it starts on the west coast in the borders and goes all the way across to the east coast.
How long?
215 miles, and you've got 4 whole days to do it.
Wow, okay. And you're training for that now. When is it?
From the time of recording, just over 2 weeks. 2 weeks and 3 days.
Blimey. Well, best of luck with it. I think that wraps up for today's episode. Thanks very much, mate. Appreciate it. And we'll catch you again in the next episode.